All right, so my job is to challenge thinking. Are you ready to lead some change? All right, so I'm going to talk to you today about accelerating your digital journey. And this is an interesting time because we've been talking about digital transformation for too many years, for many of you, I think. It's a topic that everybody's talking about, the press is sort of overusing, and so it gets a bit blurry. And so I want to bring some clarity to that for you today. I remember I started writing about digital transformation back in 2012, about this coming shift in business that we all needed to pay attention to. And at the time, not many people were paying too much attention to that story, but the people who were paying attention managed to get a bit of a head start on those that weren't. And after looking at transformation for the last few years and seeing what those leading companies have been doing, we've been able to distill out some insights as to how you can accelerate your own journey and hopefully help you catch up if you're not already leading. And if you're leading transformation, think about how you can keep pushing that boundary forward. So that's what I'm going to share with you this morning, and this afternoon I'm going to dig into some of the operational changes you can apply around your platforms to drive operational excellence in service of customers. So how do you accelerate digital? How do you accelerate this transformation around emerging technologies and create value for customers? Well, one of the first things that we've learned is that every single customer that is really pushing the envelope on digital transformation is customer obsessed. They put the customer right at the heart of their business. This is much more than saying, oh yeah, we put customers first, or paying lip service to customers. It's about really thinking about what is it our customers are trying to get to, and how do we help them get to that outcome in a better way? By making sure that every technology change that we put in place in the business it supports a better experience for the customer. It supports an improved outcome for the customer. It's not just about driving operational efficiency. And that's one of the big changes that we've seen. If you think about all the technology changes that we've done over the last 30, 40 years, many of those early changes were put in place to drive operational efficiency inside the business. And what we're seeing now is the use of technology to fundamentally create value for customers. That helps create customer loyalty. It helps drive revenue growth. And so when you see technology being used to drive revenue growth, it fundamentally changes how we need to think about the business and how we design the business. It's not about being technology-led. It's about using technology to create value. And that's very important. But how do you do that? There are 4 rules that we discovered that apply to business today that really have changed the picture for the way you think about business. And these 4 rules are around these 4 topics here: digital experience, digital operations, digital ecosystems, and digital innovation. And the customer is still at the center in all of these. So delivering experiences that are easy, effective, and emotional. Now, many people, when they think of digital transformation, they think of this. They think about digital experiences, creating new experiences through mobile or through new websites, etc. In fact, a lot of people started there. But it's much more than that, because when you're trying to transform to create value in a different way for the customer, you have to look at the operations of the business as well. And so you start to look at how you focus operations on things that customers value. In other words, instead of just looking at how do we create efficient operations, we create operations that really underpin that customer value. And then ecosystems. Now, many companies have tried to build inside their company, when you think about your own company, trying to build capabilities inside the company to allow you to do everything that you need to do to deliver a product or service to the customer. But today's business is fundamentally different. We need to be a lot more agile. And so the leading companies are trying to figure out, what are we really good at? And let's focus on that. And then the things that we're not quite so good at, but there are other companies that are really good at that thing, can we go and partner with those companies and bring that capability into our business through that partnership, instead of trying to do everything ourselves? And so you see companies using APIs to open up the technology and bring access to capabilities from other companies into the business to be able to create value for customers in different ways. So this ecosystem partnership fundamentally changes what historically we've called the supply chain, and it becomes much more of a value ecosystem that's being used to create value and outcomes for customers. And then there's innovation. A lot of people are talking about innovation because innovation is very important. But it's not just doing innovation for innovation's sake. It's not building an ivory tower innovation center and putting a whole bunch of people in there and saying, okay, you go innovate. It's about looking at how we can change the business and the operations inside the business and innovate at the intersection of operations and customer experience to create better outcomes for customers on a continuous basis. Not just moonshot innovation, but continuous small innovation as well to change the way we think about the business, to create an innovative culture inside the organization. And a lot of times I'll talk to executives about creating an innovative culture, and they'll ask about how we do that. And you talk to employees, and I ask employees, well, what happens if somebody fails? And the usual answer is, well, eventually they'll just get fired. And so the message that's been sent to employees over the years is, if you try something and fail, that's a really bad thing to do. So only try things that you can succeed at. And so you start to drive the innovation out of the company because people get afraid of trying things that they might fail at. So being able to change the culture is very important. So these 4 rules are all important, but the customer must remain at the center. A lot of companies struggle with thinking about how to think outside in, from the customer's perspective about how the company brings value to the customer. So I'm going to give you some tools to actually help think about that. But it's important that you understand these 4 rules don't sort of stand in isolation. They all feed into each other. You can't pick one and say, we're just going to focus on digital experience. You have to do all 4 of these at the same time. Now, many companies, when they start out on their digital journey, they'll start out focusing on digital experience because that's, quite honestly, that's the low-hanging fruit. The easy bit is fixing the customer experience. And if you're struggling with fixing the customer experience, just wait till you try and fix the operations. But fixing the experience is easy because it's easy to see and it's easy to measure. Right? You can do customer journey mapping. You can go out and assess customers' experiences, and you can continuously refine and improve that. You can compare your digital experiences to other companies' digital experiences. So it's pretty easy to see where you're at and compare it. What is much harder to see is the operations inside the business and how that is being tuned to create value for customers. So it's very important to do both of these at the same time. But you can't do that without changing the way you think about ecosystems and how you partner with companies. And you can't do it without changing the culture to become more innovative either. So all of these things come together to create these great experiences for customers. And fundamentally, what we're trying to do is for customers to say, is it easy? Is it personalized? Is it in the moment of need? If you read our research, a lot of my colleagues at Forrester are talking about creating really powerful moments, these moments of need for customers. So one of the nice things about digital is we're all experiencing digital change every day of our lives, right? So whether you're in a B2B or B2C environment, we are all experiencing digital change. And it's really important to understand that your customers, if you're in a B2B world, because a lot of people say, well, isn't this just B2C? B2B, your customers are people, right? And they are having these changes in their lives, and they're expecting you to provide digital services around their experiences today. And those expectations have been set by the experiences they have everywhere else in their lives. So is it easy? Is it personalized? Is it in the moment of need? So you have to think about what are the moments of need of our customers? What are those crucial touch points they have where we can either create value or destroy value? Because it's really easy to destroy value with a failed digital experience. But there are companies out there that are sort of trying to push the envelope and think about how to do this and understand what the moment of need is. So I'll give you an example, SwiftShift. SwiftShift is a company that's addressing a particular problem in healthcare. So if you're a hospital administrator, you have slots, you have basically work slots that you need to fill because employees are call in sick, or you have some open slots that you have to call in temporary staff. Or you may need to have a visit to a patient at home that you need to find somebody to go fill that slot for. And historically, this has been a very manual process. And what SwiftShift did is said, okay, we can create a platform, think about it as like the Uber for hospitals. We can create a platform that matches the need of the hospital in terms of what slots do they have available they need to fill, and those people that have availability to fill those slots. And they create this platform and share it out with through the hospitals. They share it out with all of the staff that are available to fill those slots. And you can see the numbers here, the dramatic changes in terms of being able to create value in the moment of need for the hospital and for the staff that are filling those slots and for the patients. Right? There's some value created across the board there, changing the ability to fill a slot from 1 to 2 hours down to 15 minutes. An enormous improvement there. So think about the moment of need and how you create value in your customer's moment of need. Another company, Tyco Care, they are creating a device that will allow somebody at home to be able to use this device to check on an ear exam, a throat exam, check on respiratory conditions, and all of that data gets sent up to the doctor remotely. The doctor can interact through a video and talk to the patient or the parent. And this was designed to help provide remote health care. It's a very useful case, right? And particularly if you think about places like Australia, where you have people living potentially hundreds or thousands of miles away from the nearest health center, this is very important to be able to get this kind of health care remotely. What's interesting, though, is that the moment of need is sometimes not anticipated. When they launched this and started testing it, one of the things they found is that there were actually nurses in schools in the US who were using this in school to be able to provide this sort of immediate screening of children to try and identify if children need to be sent home and be able to do a whole population of kids very quickly. So a moment of need that they hadn't particularly anticipated. They also found doctors putting this into their practices so that they could do pre-screening of patients through their practice, and it's a much more efficient way of collecting data and having that available to the doctor. So sometimes the moment of need isn't necessarily what you think it is when you first start the journey. So it's important to be able to learn from customers' experiences and pivot as you go through in terms of being able to change the dynamic that's going on there. So what we have to think about is this, that needs are not the same as desires. Now, when I talk to marketers, it's really interesting because marketers have a very different perspective than technologists. And marketers will often think about customer needs and try and match customers' needs with features and functions of technology, et cetera, or if they're a technology marketer, or products or services if they're a physical products or services marketer. But when you think about what customers are after, they're actually after something beyond needs. Desires is a more emotional thing. So I like desires because it thinks about the emotion that's related to the outcome the customer's trying to get to. What is the desired outcome? And you'll see a lot of companies thinking about how do we talk about using design thinking in the way they approach looking at what the customer's needs are. The reason why they use design thinking, why I would recommend you use design thinking, is because it is connected to the customer's emotions, and it's trying to get at the emotional outcome, sort of the underlying outcome the customer's trying to get to. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean by needs not being the same as desires. So, has anybody been through sales training here? Probably some people at the back, right? So, by the way, if you haven't been through sales training, I would recommend it. I went through sales training early on in my career, and it was one of the most interesting things I'd ever done. And I realized we're all in sales. No matter what we think we're in, and no matter how much we might disparage the sales team, we're all in sales. We're all selling something, right? So very good training to go through. But one of the interesting things is, sales training, they'll often get the new salesperson up and say, oh, sell me this product. So sell me this drill, right? And the new salesperson will get up and they'll talk about all the great features of the drill, how it's got a half-inch chuck, and it's got reverse and forward gears, and it's got hammer action, and it's got this movable handle and things. All of these great features address the needs of the customer. Needs of the customer who have specific needs around what kind of chuck size it is, whether it's got a hammer action, etc. So that's great. And then the experienced salesperson gets up and talks about something different. The experienced salesperson gets up and talks about what a great hole this drill will provide you, how clean that hole will be, how it's just the right depth, because it's not the drill the customer wants. They're getting the drill to get the hole. The outcome they want is the hole. They don't particularly want to own the drill, right? And this is one of the things we forget. when we think about, especially if we're a product company, we get obsessed with how our customers want to buy our products. Our customers don't want to buy our products. They want the outcomes our products deliver. And so if we want to connect emotionally with the desired outcomes of the customer, we have to connect to the outcomes they're trying to get to. And that's really important when you're thinking about digital transformation. Think about the outcomes your customers are trying to get to. So here's a common sort of thing that we all can relate to, farming. Right? Farming's been around for thousands of years. And if you're in the agribusiness, you've probably been selling fertilizer and seed and pesticide to farmers for decades. But the simple truth is they don't want to own fertilizer, pesticides, and seeds. What they want is an outcome. And the outcome they want, their desire, is for high yield per acre. Right? They want maximum yield. And so you sort of start to see the shift in terms of how do we help the customer, in this case the farmer, get to the outcome they desire. The way we can get to the outcome is thinking about what are the things that we can bring them that will help them maximize their yield. And maybe there are some data services we can bring. And so you see companies like DuPont's Pioneer division creating a data service for customers that helps them maximize their yield by analyzing their soil chemistry, analyzing the topography of the land, what the irrigation's like, how much water they need to put on the land, when they need to apply pesticide, how much fertilizer to apply, what density of seeds they need to sow their seeds at, to maximize the yield using data and insights. Things that they hadn't been able to do before, but they can do now because they're looking at what's the desired outcome and how do we use the emerging technologies we have available today to deliver the outcome in a better way. Another example, anybody been on a cruise here? Yeah, a few of you. Okay, I went on a cruise this year. I got married on a cruise ship, so it's sort of dear to my heart. There's a little story, actually. The reason why I got married on a cruise ship is because it was the cheapest wedding we could do, and it didn't have to invite anybody, so it was great. So if you think about the cruise experience, if you've ever been on a cruise, you probably have this nightmare recollection of boarding the cruise ship. If anybody's ever been on a cruise, getting on board the ship is like the worst thing possible. You pack 2,000 people into one place and say, wait there for a few hours until we're ready to board. Interestingly, getting on a cruise ship this year was a completely different experience because the cruise line had recognized that this was a painful experience. It was a moment of need for customers. And they suddenly figured out that they could actually schedule their passengers and say, don't all turn up at the same time in the morning. Turn up at this particular time. And we walked into the cruise terminal, gave our paperwork, 30 seconds later, given our cruise pass, walked onto the ship. It was an unbelievable experience. But when you're a cruise line, you think about the moment of need. Carnival Cruises looked at their customers and they talked to their customers about what they were trying to do. And they found out that customers weren't really just buying a cruise ticket. That wasn't the outcome they wanted. The outcome they want is to have a memorable vacation. They want to have those memories to look back on, to reflect back with their families. And so they try to think about ways they could create a more memorable experience for their customers. And they looked at what was going on at Disney's theme parks, and they saw Disney doing this thing with magic bands, and they thought, maybe we can do the same thing with our ships. So they hired the chief digital officer from Disney who came over to Carnival and did a similar thing with Carnival. They created this medallion system for their princess lines where this is a digital medallion. It can be worn on the wrist, it can be worn on a necklace. Every cruise member gets one. And essentially, they get it shipped to their home before they leave home. When they arrive at the cruise ship, the process is simple, right? It's all digital. They just go straight onto their ship. Everything's all set. Every time they want to go on and off the ship, you have this experience of the fact that they have digital scanners to be able to use near-field communications to pull up the data, pull up images of the passengers. So it's a seamless experience. It's a very smooth experience for them. Not only that, they've been able to connect that to where they are actually opening their doors, their cabin doors, so they can get in and out of their cabins when they need to without having to use a key. And they can pay for things on the ship. But they can also connect their location. So now we know when a passenger goes to a particular event or goes on a particular excursion. And they can tie the photographs they take of that event to those passengers' experiences. And so when the passengers can then go to a digital library and see all of the photographs of themselves at the event and the photographs of the event, and look back on that and have that sort of reflective memory of the experience, it increases the engagement of the experience and the enjoyment of the experience. So that's the idea of why they've been doing this. Now, this is not a small investment. If you think about digitizing a cruise ship, that's a huge investment, right? You've got to fundamentally rewire the whole ship. Just to change the passenger doors on the cabins to be able to unlock digitally is an expense in itself. But every terminal, every point of sale terminal in the ship, every security checkpoint in the ship, all sorts of changes have to go. It's a massive investment before you know that they're going to get that payback. So how do they know they're going to get the payback? They did a massive amount of research with the customers first to make sure that it was going to be worth the investment. Now, a lot of companies think they can just skip that, right? They say, well, we know our customers. We know what our customers want. I guarantee you, you do not know what your customers want. You have to do the research with your customers because you will find out things that you didn't expect to find. Once you've done the research, then you can answer the question, how can we use digital to deliver these better outcomes for our customers tomorrow? And it's really about thinking about the experiences you create and what you can do in your business to deliver those outcomes. So one of the challenges is that even once you've created these great experiences, those experiences evolve. So the first time I used a digital key in a hotel was about 5 years ago at the W Hotel in London. And I tried it out, and I didn't expect it to change my world. It didn't really change my world. It's cool technology. It'll open your door. It doesn't really work much better than a plastic key. You're less likely to lose your phone, I guess, than a plastic key. And I'm always demagnetizing my key. I don't know about you guys. But so in that respect, it's pretty good. The challenge I had was I went up to my room that night, and I tried to unlock my door, and it wouldn't unlock. So I had my expectation set that I was going to be able to use my phone. I used it once quite successfully. And then when I came back from dinner, it didn't work. And I wasn't sure why. I went down to reception and said, so my phone's not unlocking my door. And the first question, they looked at me and they said, so are you connected to the hotel Wi-Fi? No. Oh, well, it only works if you're connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. Oh. So A, they hadn't told me that. B, they hadn't set their Wi-Fi up to automatically connect or the app to automatically connect to the hotel Wi-Fi. And so there was an expectation set, and the execution in terms of the operations of the business was not delivered. And I asked them about why my plastic key didn't work, and they said, well, when you set up for a digital key, we automatically deactivate your plastic key. Okay, another breakdown in operational process, right? Now, since then, they fixed all of that, which is great. So this was early days. But it just goes to show that when you create these digital experiences, you have to think about the operations on the business as well, because sometimes they can really destroy the experience that you set up in terms of the outcome in that moment of need. But the other challenge is that these experiences are constantly evolving. Has anybody stayed in a Hilton hotel recently? Did you do this whole thing where you can pick your room on a map? So the really cool thing is that you can pick they'll display you a blueprint of the floors in the hotel, and you can select your room like you select a seat on an airline. Now that is a digital experience that may have value to people who travel a lot, because if you travel a lot, you don't want to be next to the ice machine, or in this case, a train station. And being able to select your own room before you check in is quite convenient. So the experience has changed. Now, when you change these experiences, the expectations rise. And if you're sitting there and say, well, we're a B2B company, we don't have all of this challenge of consumers, you're wrong. Because your customers are doing this day in, day out. Your B2B buyers, the people using your products and services, they're having these experiences every single day. And so it's resetting their expectations about what is possible from digital experiences. And it's starting to change their expectations of what we should be delivering in a B2B environment as well as B2C. To help illustrate this, I needed a way of kind of talking to CEOs and business execs to help them understand what was going on. So to help illustrate this, I created this mathematical formula. So I'm going to ask you to do a bit of math. I know it's early in the morning, and you've had some coffee, so you should be, I'm told you're very bright. You'll be able to figure this out, right? So here's the formula. Experience over expectation equals perceived value. Now, I encourage you to share this with your CEO to help them understand what's happening here. So if you think about what's going on in the world around you, your customers have this formula playing out every day. Experience over expectation equals perceived value. Doesn't matter what the numbers are. You can put any number in here, and how you measure it doesn't really matter. It's actually the dynamic that's going on that matters. Because if you deliver an experience that's fairly static, and then you have some expectations that are constantly rising, then you have perceived value going down, right? So most people will deliver a new experience, say a new mobile app or a new website, and the experience remains fairly static. It's a project they deliver for on a particular date. They finish the project, they move on to the next project, and 12 months go by. But those expectations are constantly going up. So they expect this formula is getting out of balance. I'll make it easy. I'll put some numbers in for you. So 100 over 100 equals 1. Everything's in balance, right? But if the expectations are rising, the experience doesn't change, then what you start to see is this formula going out of balance. Now, what this means is we have to design the business to constantly evolve the experiences of the customer. That means we have to design business to constantly change, constantly evolve. And that's one of the problems we have today, is that most businesses today are not designed to constantly change and constantly evolve. They're designed to be fairly static, to evolve very slowly. And we have to think about how we evolve those experiences. Because while experiences do shape expectations, it's the degree to which the experiences we design deliver outcomes customers value that actually shapes the customer's perception of value. And the perception of value is actually down to the individual. So whether a customer values your product or service is very individual, and it changes based on their expectations. Right? So this is an important dynamic that's going on. So to help actually accelerate and think about how to change digital transformation, there's some strategies I want to share with you that are very specific to the way you think about this. So I'll start with business extension strategies. Extension strategies are where most companies start, because you take the existing business model that you have, the way you generate revenue, you say, how do we improve this using digital technologies or new experiences? And the way to think about this is I like cars, so I use a lot of cars in my presentations. So this is a car. A Porsche Cayman, for those of you who don't know Porsches. So nice car, great car. I'd love to have one. I don't have one. But this is a great little car. So traditional car goes on the road. It's great. But what if you want to create a race car? You could go and build a new race car and design it from the ground up and have a new product and satisfy that different market. Or you could do what Porsche did, let's say, with the Cayman, and create a GT4 Club Sport. Now you take the same basic car, but you adapt it to the market need, so you extend the value of the platform to be able to create value for a different set of customers, in this case, race drivers. And this is an extension strategy. It's the ability to extend the product to suit other customers. So think about I want to give you an illustration that will help think about that. So if you think about the Princess Cruises, the Carnival example, the medallion, the medallion is an extension strategy. You're not fundamentally changing the revenue model of the business, but you're extending the way you create value for customers by creating a digital experience that's different for the customer. And then Zorro, which is a website from Grainger, who are an industrial products company. They really target sort of medium to large firms. They wanted a way to get to the small business owner, so they created Zorro.com specifically targeted to the small business owner. The same operational process, the same products and services that they're selling to customers, but a different channel to be able to get to that set of customers. So those are extension strategies. When you see extension strategies, they typically follow the improving the existing customer experience or extending the reach to new customers. And then there are also operational improvements, increasing operational efficiency and effectiveness in service of customers that can extend value to customers by changing the way you operate. And in fact, if you're in a commodity business where you don't set the price of a product that's set on markets, then mainly the only way you get to create value through this sort of extension strategy is through operational change. So some examples of these companies doing this, you take a look at something like Urban Outfitters, where they use a single view of stock and ship from store to be able to reduce the amount of markdowns they have, so that increases the operational effectiveness of the company and increase sell-through in the stores. But think about what the customer impact of this is. The customer impact is that they get more value because they get the products that they want at the time they want them, right, in the moment of need. So there's an extension of value for the customer there. Or many of you may use Starbucks, right? I mean, think about the Starbucks example of the app to be able to order ahead with Starbucks. If you're a regular Starbucks user, saves you time having to wait in line. Saving time for customers is an enormous value creation for customers. So that's an extension strategy. They're still selling coffee, but they're doing it and extending the way they create value for customers by changing the way they deliver that. And then there's an example like Telefonica, who looked at the way they create SIM cards for particular customers, satisfy SIM card orders, and they used RPA to be able to help change that process and improve that process. And then there are business transformation strategies. So business transformation strategies are this sort of kind of blue sky thinking of how do we change our business to fundamentally create value for customers in new ways. Now, frankly, this is what I call digital transformation. Everything up to this point is digital bolt-on. It's adding capabilities to existing business. Transformation implies fundamental change to the business. And this is what companies struggle with. So think about if you were sort of bootstrap your company from the get-go, how would you actually create value for customers today with the technologies you have around? Now, I do a lot of workshops with clients to try and help them do this. And one of the things, I used to use the business model canvas, which is a tool that's used by a lot of universities to teach entrepreneurs how to build a startup. The challenge in existing businesses is it's very hard to apply for an existing business, and it's hard to get people to think of the right way. So we created the Business Innovation Canvas to help people be able to do this. So the way you would apply this is sitting with your executives to start with, to help them think, sort of challenge their thinking and help think differently about the business. And you'll see on the left side of the innovation canvas is essentially everything about the customer and their customer journey, the outcomes they're trying to get to. Remember I talked about desired outcomes. What are the desired outcomes of these customers? What are they trying to get to? Now they're getting to those outcomes some way today. So what are the products and services they use to get to that outcome? They may not be all of ours, they may not be any of our products. But what are the total set of products and services they use to get to that outcome, right? And then what are the pain points in that journey to get to that? So understanding that's the left side. Once you get that clarity, and typically there's a lot of research that has to be done with customers to get enough clarity on what are those desired outcomes. Once you get there, then you're in a position to start looking at how to innovate around that outcome. How do we use the emerging technologies that we have available today to deliver the outcome in a new way? And when I do workshops with customers, one of the interesting things is I'll sit down with a group of executives like you, and we'll work through this, and I'll set them a challenge. Okay, we'll think about the desired outcome of the customer. And I ask them to say, okay, just write down what you think the desired outcomes of the customers are. And I guarantee you, every one of them will start with okay, well, they want to own our product. That's essentially what it comes down to, is they want to own our product. And that is not the desired outcome of the customer, as you can probably guess. Right? The desired outcome of the customer is something to do with applying the product to get to something else. And so we have to walk them to the point of, okay, what's the end point they're trying to get to? Once you do that, you can start thinking about how do we actually change that value equation. Like I talked about with the farmers, right? The outcome they want to get to is high yield. How do we create value for the customers around that outcome? And so that allows you to start thinking about how you use emerging technologies to do that. And one of the examples I love in healthcare, I talk about a lot on stage, is the Proteus pill. Anybody familiar with the Proteus pill? It's funny. I've been talking about this pill in presentations for about 4 or 5 years now, since it started in prototype. It was approved by the FDA last year. So the little green pill on the right has a silicon chip on it. That's the dot on the top, smaller than a grain of sand. And when you swallow the pill, the acid in your stomach acts like battery acid and powers the chip. Sends the signal to the patch that the patient's wearing on the outside to say they've swallowed the pill. Like high-tech stuff, right? Cool. Why the heck would you do this? Well, some pills, particularly in the US, are very expensive, right? So if you're talking $10,000 a pill, you want to make sure the patient takes that pill at the time they're supposed to take it, or even the fact that they did take it at all, right? Because it's only effective if it's taken, right? And you want to help the patient get better. So there's some real benefits to health insurance companies to make sure the patient's taking the medications that they want, that they're prescribed at the time they're supposed to take them. So all that's great, but then you kind of think about, well, what else could we get from this, right? How far away are we from the technology that will allow us to swallow a pill and give us a full body chemistry breakdown and send all of that data to an app on our phone? And then we're kind of like, okay, well, I think about the outcomes we want from healthcare, and I work with healthcare companies and say, well, what's the outcome their customer wants? And we get to, well, they want to get better, et cetera. But no, the outcome we really want is delivered by the ultimate healthcare app, which is called Days Left to Live. Right? So Days Left to Live, why is that an ultimate healthcare? You're thinking that's a terrible idea, right? I can tell. It's just like, what? Did he really say that? So imagine this, right? You've got the Days Left to Live app on your phone. It's giving you how many days you've got left to live, and that's kind of sobering in itself. But then you go out on a bit, you go out with your friends, you have a party, right? And you drink way too much, you eat too much pizza, you get up with a hangover the next day. I know none of you have ever done this, I know. And then you look at your Days Left to Live app, and it's gone down by a month. Oh, crap. Right? Now you're like, okay, maybe I can do something about this. So you kind of think, okay, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to start working out. I'm working out at the gym every day. And a couple of months later, I'm looking at my Days Left to Live app. I'm very happy to see that over the time I've been working out, my Days Left to Live has been gradually going up instead of down. And I've added 3 months onto my life because I've been having a better lifestyle. Now, why do I call this the ultimate healthcare app? Because it gives you feedback that allows you to control the most important thing that we can do to improve our healthcare, which is what we put into our bodies. Right? And that's the thing we're lacking right now. And we go to the doctor every 6 months. He says, okay, you need to work out more and eat less and drink less. And we all get that same message, right? I think all doctors basically get told this is what you have to tell their patients. and we all come out and we say, okay, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to work out. And it works for some of us for some time. And then a lot of us doesn't quite work so well. Anyway, so the challenge is we don't have this feedback loop, right? And if we have the feedback loop, we can actually gain insight from that and do something about it. And so this technology and emerging technology allows us to create these feedback loops to help create better outcomes for customers. And as you do that, you can think about how do we get to disrupt the customer to be able to create these experiences, disrupt the experience. If you look at all the disruptive technologies, they all do these two things really well. They give customers back time because it's the most valuable thing that we can give them. Days left to live, we give him back days. Okay, days of life. Somebody will actually create this app, I'm sure, at some point. And then customer pleasure, right? Or reducing pain. How do we increase the pleasure or reduce the pain from the customer's experience? That upper right quadrant there, or the upper right corner, that's where all the disruptive experiences live. You want to try and do those two things. And as you do that, you start to see some shifts. So you see companies like John Deere who are changing the way farming is done by adding sensors into products, collect data out of farms, and be able to essentially manage farms remotely. And change the way we think about farming, the agribusiness, through the My Logistics service. You have companies like Turo, okay, it's off. All right, so Turo has an app they've created to help. If you've got a nice car sitting in your driveway and it's sitting there most of the time, you might want to let it out to somebody to use, and you can rent it out through the Turo app. I would never do this with one of my cars, but apparently some people do. But it's an app that provides this for experience the moment of need and utilizes an asset that's often underutilized. So they're trying to change that. And then you think about the auto business, you look at Tesla, and many people think of Tesla as an auto company. But really they're a company, as Elon Musk would say, they're trying to change the way we consume oil. They are trying to change the way we think about driving. And so, yes, they provide electric vehicles, but they're looking at how do we create an environment, an ecosystem for our customers to help them harness the power of the sun to put that energy back into their car so they're using less fuel from power generation. So they're building these home power units that allow people to collect from solar and store it in batteries in the home and charge up their cars. So it's a fundamentally different way of thinking about the auto business, much more from an ecosystem of energy as opposed to just a car from going to A to B. So what is the outcome the customer wants? Many of their customers don't just want to own an electric car. They're environmentally conscious. They want to lower the ecosystem bill. So think about those things, and then think about how you accelerate digital innovation by answering 3 questions. So the 3 questions I want you to think about as you work through the next day and a half of these. What outcomes do our customers truly value? What are those desired outcomes? Not needs, but desired outcomes. How might technology help deliver those outcomes? And then what resources would we need if we started our business today? And think about it, if you started a greenfield business, if you started from scratch, what would you truly need in your business? And what could you get from somewhere else? If you answer those questions, then you can really understand how to transform the business. A little plug for the afternoon session. I'm going to give you some lessons from Raleigh School on how to apply that to operations of the business this afternoon. So tune in for that. And then I think we planned for Q&A, but I'm not sure we have time. So do we have time? 5 minutes? OK, we've got some time. All right, so we've got some time for some questions. Anybody in the audience have any burning questions? Yeah, so the Innovation Canvas is really designed to be used in an existing business to help people change the way you think. So I mentioned about a lot of the employees struggle with, or executives particularly struggle with, well, our customers they want to buy our products. So what's the desired outcome? So you can use it to drive sort of executive sessions or brainstorming sessions. Using it in IT alone would be challenging. So what I would encourage you to do if you're in IT is to work with business partners, lines of business, to bring that kind of framework to them, talk about what it means to understand customer outcomes. If you're in IT and you're not working very closely with marketing, I would definitely encourage you to be doing so. So because the voice of the customer is typically going to come through marketing. They're responsible for getting that voice of the customer, understanding the customer's desired outcomes. And so that close relationship will help drive and accelerate transformation. An interesting anecdote, actually, with the whole digital transformation research that I started 5 or 6 years ago came out of research I was doing looking at high-performing customer experience companies. We've been tracking customer experience for many years. And I wanted to understand how those high-performing customer experience companies were using technology. And we noticed that those companies that were really the high outperformers were having a very close relationship between the CIO and the CMO. They were working hand in glove with each other. And so we started seeing this shift in the way IT was working with the rest of the business, particularly with marketing. And then we started seeing sort of this change in the way that we're thinking about technology, and that's why we started the whole process on digital transformation. So I think it's not an easy question to answer. That's why you asked it, right? So you start with the fact that you live in a regulatory world, right? And healthcare is the same, right? You have to be compliant. But being compliant doesn't necessarily mean making the worst experience. I think back to one of the early examples we saw of changing operations to improve the customer outcome experience. And it was actually in the banking industry, financial services industry. And this company was sending out a statement to customers. And it had, at the back of the statement, it had like 5 pages of legal disclaimer on it. And so the experience for the customer wasn't a great experience. And they've been doing this for years. And it was because legal said that's what they've got to do. Then somebody sort of decided to challenge the thinking and lead some change, right? And they said, well, this is a terrible experience, because we go and talk to our customers and they say that they hate this experience. And so they actually sat down with legal and said, what do we really, really, really need to have in this statement? And can we potentially change it? And how could we change it? And they helped the legal side understand how it was such a bad experience and to start thinking differently about how they could create compliance. And they realized that what they needed to print out was much, much less than they were actually doing. There were other ways around compliance to be able to get there and create a better experience. And so they netted out that they got rid of pretty much all of the text and delivered that compliance in another way. I don't quite remember exactly how they did it. But the story, the lesson in that is, don't assume that when somebody says we have to do this for compliance, that's the only way to do it, right? That there may be other ways of being compliant with regulatory hurdles that allow you to still deliver a great customer experience. And so you have to try and continuously push the boundaries to make sure that you're not hindering the experience to get to where you want to get to. So change management is a huge problem in transformation or an opportunity, depending on how you look at it. One of the biggest challenges is actually how do you create the agility you need in the business to keep up with these evolving expectations. And so there's some things you can do with the technology platform, which is why you're all here today, of course, to help accelerate that. But the change management is still a hurdle, right? And so you have to actually change the governance process that's going on. You can't do it with the old governance process. You can't still have the same hierarchy of approval. And I'll give you a lesson. So most people probably have heard that GE's been going through their own transformation for many years, right? And you've probably seen GE being in the news, particularly this week. And so I just published a paper looking at what was going on with GE and their digital transformation. And one of the lessons that was learned from that was the challenges they had in the culture of the organization and changing the culture of the organization, because you create this digital unit that's working very fast, but you have the same hierarchy of approval and process going through, and it slows everything down. Right? And it can be really demotivating as well if you've hired digital staff, new staff in with digital skills, let's say, and they want to go and change the world. And then all of a sudden they're being told, no, you can't change it quite so fast. They're going to go find somewhere they can go change the world. You have to change the governance process. So the way you do that is you change the mind of the executives. So you have to have some way of sitting down with the executives and helping them understand that they have to change the business. They have to change the way they think about the operations of the business and the management process and the structure, and they accelerate the entire business. So a lot of my research talks about how you change the business, how you do those changes. And it's got to start at the top. It has to start with the CEO. You cannot do digital transformation unless the CEO is bought into it. The best you can do without the CEO is digital bolt-on, where you have different divisions of departments improving the experience that you have today. If you truly want to get to transformation, you've got to get the CEO on board. Thank you. Great question. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate your attention. Thank you.